Listen, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. I know how to unlock what's in me. I've got to use the name of Jesus. There is power in the name.
Every limit, every lie, everything that humanity has said about you is coming to an end. We're going to discover, glory, who we are on heaven's terms. I want to continue something I started teaching a couple of weeks ago, so I need to probably review it to bring us back up. My goal is to clear up confusion so that you and I can walk in the truth that sets men free. Are you hearing me? Now, I started, if I believe, by giving an example of a beetle bug and a Rolls Royce. And without going through the whole example, my point of it is that sometimes our idea of salvation is not God's idea of salvation. And so until you and I can get on the same page with him, we're stepping where he's stepping, we won't experience the salvation that is in God's mind concerning you. And salvation covers every area of your life. It covers your marriage, your singleness, your finance. It covers everything that has to do with living. And a lot of times our lives are so messed up that any increase, man, we're so excited and we thank God for it. But yet, it isn't the salvation that God's called you to walk in. It's not the blessing. It's not the prosperity. It's not what God had in mind when Jesus went to the cross. But if we could just get, just improve just a little bit more, where we think that we have accomplished something. And so sometimes we make our goal down here when God's goal for your life is here. I mean, I don't have a car. I'm so happy just to have a beetle bug, but God is trying to give you a Rolls Royce. And so let's talk about that. What we want to see take place. Now, what is the problem? Why is that so? Because I believe we don't realize that the Jesus story is God telling your story. Until we can clear that up, you're going to still be the star in your own movie. Here's the mistake. Here's where we all miss it, is because we becomes the star in our movie. If you're the star in your movie, then that makes Jesus passive. Do you understand? If Jesus is in a passive role in your life, in your relationships, in your marriage, in the way you do life, then if he's passive, then you're saying, I don't need God. And I know that's not what we mean to say, but when we approach life where Jesus is not the star pupil, he is not the one starring in this movie, that now I'm the star in this movie, then you're in a movie that God's not in. I'm going to say it again. You can be married and be in a movie that God's not in. You can be born again and be in a movie that God's not in. You can be doing life and God not be in the movie. If he's not the star in the movie, then you're the star. And if you and I are the star, then God is not in the movie. Now, he said that in the scriptures. He says, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't I do all of these things in your name? And Jesus responds to that group. He says, depart from me, you are a worker of iniquity. I never knew you. What? I never knew you. Why? Because you wasn't starring in you wasn't an actor in his movie. You were starring in your own movie. And didn't realize that you don't know God. Now, all of the problems with humanity that's the real reason for all of humanity's problems. It's the reason for my marriage problem. It's the reason for my financial problem. It's the reason for my relational problems. It's my reason for every problem in life is I don't know God. That's the story of the cross. He's coming to clear up the confusion that we have as human beings. We're trying to do life without Him starring in it. What has it brought humanity? Destruction, failure, hate, divorce. And we still haven't realized what's going on yet. So instead of teaching you from the classroom, Jesus chooses to come in human form to begin to model to you and I the human story. You need a model of the human story in order to be successful. If you don't have a model of Jesus, you do have a model. And we've got to realize that. Now, God created you, you've got to settle this, to be a reflective being, which means you cannot be yourself without a model. Now, God intended that He would be the model of all humanity, but when man fell, Satan became his model. Now, what is it that we're modeling? We're modeling desires and intentions. See, I become a model of somebody else's desire. When we're in this confused state of being because we're fallen, then I'm looking to discover who I am by looking at other people, either on television or the people that are around me. They become my model for defining who I am. And all of that is wrong because no one knows who they are. So Jesus steps in on the scene and tries to put you in step with this real story concerning your life. And it's not possible until Jesus becomes the model, becomes the star in everything you're doing, not some of the things you're doing. My resistance to Him being the star actor in this movie is the reason you continually to fail. And if you don't ever take the blinders off of your eyes, you will walk away and you will blame everybody for your failure and never take the responsibility that you have failed not because of anybody else. You have failed because you have the wrong model. Wrong model. And today I want to clear it up so that we can be successful the way that God intended for us to be successful. So in John chapter 8 is where I begin. Jesus draws our attention to the fact that there are only two models. Please let this get on the inside of you. My actions and your actions, my behavior and your behavior is coming from one of these models. And Jesus draws our attention to that. Now, if we don't like the model that we see, we tend to choose the opposite model in our mind. Grow up in a household, you didn't like how your parents raised you, so you decided when you grow up that you're not going to model that message with your own kids. But here's the problem. You still are responding and not initiating who you are. God is trying to get you to initiate who you are and not respond to what's put in front of you. I'm saying so much stuff you just... Listen, the reason that you cuss people out is you're responding to what's in front of them. The reason that you talk ugly out of your mouth is you're constantly responding instead of initiating who you are. Every time I am nasty, every time I'm mean, here's where it's coming because I'm reflecting something. If you look at the ministry of Jesus, you notice he never looked at that kind of stuff because he was trying to reflect that. He was trying to reflect another world into this world. This world was deceived, and this world was confused about so many things. And we're trying to do life under this deception. And God is trying to tell you, you don't know your story. Here's your story. And if you don't look at me, you're never going to see your story. You are made to reflect. And if you're not spending time with God, then you're going to be a reflection of something that is not God. And I don't care if you're born again, talking tongues. If you don't spend time with God, your mouth will talk like a devil. You'll act like a devil, and yet you'll be going to heaven. And you're justified that it's all right. Why? Because the devil will always justify that. You won't take responsibility for your up and down, your in and out. Is Jesus up and down, in and out? No, he isn't. The Bible said he is the same yesterday and today and forevermore. You have the ability to be the same.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wow.
But I'm telling you, when I'm not responding the same, I have a model in front of me, and I'm reflecting that. See, you are a mirror. Mirror just reflects whichever's in front of it. The nature of a mirror is to reflect back what's in front of it.
That's right.
And so, listen to me. You can't blame anybody for what you're reflecting. You get to choose what you put in front of you to reflect. And if you're not reflecting the one who created you, and you're reflecting something else, that's because you keep something in your mirror that's not God. And you cannot blame anybody for that. You have to take the responsibility for it, because it's only when you take the responsibility that you'll put what should be in front of you and start to reflect that instead of what you've been reflecting. We want things to go well, but we don't know how it works because we don't know how we work. We want to change our status in life. We want to change our finances. We want to change our children. We want to change our marriage. The question is, what kind of mirror do you have before your children? The reason that God took Abraham is because Abraham would reflect God. The question is, are we a people that's reflecting God? What kind of children are you raising? What kind of reflection, what kind of model are you giving them? Are you modeling Satan in your house in the name of Jesus? Our kids don't want our church. They don't want anything to do with it because of what we are modeling. We blame, we point fingers, we lie, we accuse us. That's not modeling Jesus. And I'm going to show you that because I'm trying to expose how the enemy is robbing our next generation and also robbing you of the joy, the peace, and the happiness that God came to bring you. Woo, glory. You want just a little peace. God's trying to give you peace that passes understanding. You want a little bit of money. God is trying to make you rich. Woo, glory. But you keep looking at poverty in the eye and keep reflecting that. You talk what you are spending your time with. And it's time for us to stop being ignorant about how to change things. See, when you don't realize that your only course of change comes through the flesh, through manipulation. Some of us are so good at manipulating, we don't even know that we are manipulators and we still have a problem. And I'm not telling you that to condemn you. I'm doing what you need to know so that you can stop what you're doing that's not God. Now Jesus is telling his disciples, he's telling people who believe in him. He's talking to the believer. How many believers we got in here? And he draws the believer to two models. And he says to him in John 31, he speaks to those that believe on him, and he says to the ones that believe on him, believing on Jesus is not enough. Look at your neighbor and say, believing on Jesus is not enough. Come on, say it on another time. Believing on Jesus is not enough. Say it again. Believing on Jesus is not enough. How are you saying that? Because Jesus said it. Jesus said to them in verse 31, Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Now he's talking to those that believe in him. That's not enough unless you know the truth. See, you can believe, but unless you know the truth, you're never going to be free. Unless you operate from a position of truth, you can never be free. If you die, you'll go to heaven. And here's the problem with that. You're trying to believe God for things, and you're not in truth. And so he says to them, you need to know truth, because truth sets you free. God wants us to be free in every arena of the human experience. Wants you to be free of sickness, free of disease, free of the lies of the enemy, free of the model that he's presenting, the devil is presenting before you. He wants you free in your marriage, free as a husband, free as a wife, free as a parent. And not, listen to me, stop looking at the other person. He wants you free. We would be all right if they would do something. No, you're bound because you're still looking at somebody else. And that's what they said here to Jesus. They says, man, we're not in bondage to anybody. It's somebody else. It's those people are not Abraham's children. And that's what we do. I'm free. We'd have a good relationship if you were doing right. Jesus answered them and said, most surely I say unto you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. See, you want to blame somebody else, and God has said, no, stop it. You think your relationship would be better if they would do what you think is right. And so you run around trying to get people on your side. You're in bondage. I'm all right. Go ask so-and-so. That's an indication that you're definitely the wrong one. So you know what Jesus said to them? Because they said the exact same thing. Here's what he said to them. If you, I love that, whoever commits sin, hello, do you commit sin? Then your spouse, your children, your money, or whatever is not the problem. Sha-ta-la-la-la-baha. Jesus clearing the confusion. See, we can't be free if we just don't deal with this. So then we've got to write a story for our own freedom. We have to write a story that God has never written about you. So you start writing your own. This is what freedom looks like for me, for you to do that. No, Jesus said, here's freedom for you and I. You've got to know truth. And the truth that you know, didn't say about somebody doing something and being right. It says you got to know truth. You have to experience truth in order to be truthful. You got to experience truth in order to be free. Woo, glory. Do you understand what I'm saying? I pray I can get to what I want to say. Whosoever commits sin is a slave of sin. Now that says to me, we don't have to commit sin. But to be truthfully about it, I never considered whether or not I don't have to commit sin. I just believe, well, you know, I'm in this world because we were taught that. You're in the world, you're going to sin. The only one perfect is Jesus. But what is Jesus saying here? He doesn't talk like that, but we have developed a theology that he is not demonstrating to you and I So we accept sin because we believe that only one perfect is Jesus, and that's okay because we can be forgiven. And so what we do is we make excuses when Jesus said, if you commit sin, you are enslaved. Oh my God. And I believe that the problem we have so much problem trying not to commit sin is because we've tried that and it didn't work. So we just had to settle in on something else. Well, I try to do, but I got to be real, preacher. You got to be really in your flesh. Now, because we didn't know how this thing works, that will empower you. So we've been trying to be sinless in our flesh, sinless in our ability. See, what you got to realize, where you end, he begins. The Apostle Paul figured that out in I think it's 2 Corinthians chapter 7, or he says, when I am weak, then am I strong. Strength made available in my weakness. And Paul, when he figured it out, he says, man, I will glory in this state because I've discovered where I end and where he begins. The star is in the movie. Jesus says in 36, therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. Well, did he make us free? Yes. Then he said, you are free how? Indeed. See, heaven says, I made you free. The earth says, I won't be free until I get to heaven. It's all right. But Jesus said, if the Son makes you free, you are. Not going to be, you are what? Free indeed. Now notice he's not talking about nobody else but you. He's not talking about your freedom comes because people around you are good people, or because everything working around you the way it should work. He said you're free because he who the Son makes you free is free how? Indeed. Verse 37. So he goes on to have this conversation. And what is he doing? He's exposing to them the confusion that we're operating in, showing them that there's only two models, and we've got to get a hold of what model that we're reflecting. He says, I know that you are Abraham's descendants, but you seek to kill me. Whew. Because my word has no place in you. You know, people don't like you because you do the word. People despise you because you want to do the word. People want to hurt you because you do the word, verbally hurt you. He said, but I speak what I have seen of my father. Here's a model. And you do what you have seen of your father. There's another model. One is a model of life and one is a model of destruction. So you can look at your life and how am I treating you, then I can tell you what model is before me. Oh, I just need to hurry and get to what I want. They answered and said to him, Abraham is our father. Listen. Oh, my God. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. If he was your father, you would look like him. Oh, Lord. If God is your father, you will do the works of your father. That's what Jesus came to show, that God was my father and the works that I do came from my father. If God is your father, you will do the works of the father. That's why it's not enough just to believe. And I'll let you see that in a minute. He says, and now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. Abraham did not do this. You do the deeds of your father, another model. And then they said to him, we're not born of fornicators. We have one Father, that is God. And Jesus said to them, if God were your father, if God were your model, if God were your father, if God were your model, notice what he said, you would love. Amen. That's the answer. If God is my model, I would love. How do I know that I'm modeling or reflecting him in my marriage, reflecting him in my relationship, in my attitude and in my action and in my responding? How do I know that? Because if God is my father, I will love. Listen, that becomes a part of my will is to love. It's not something that I'm forcing myself to do. It now becomes something that I'm willing to do. I want to do. I want to love, not because you're lovable. I'm not loving you because you're lovable. He's my father, and because he's my father, I will love you. Woo, glory. That's my will to love. And if you have never known truth, then you have never known love. And that's what Jesus is saying. If you don't know truth, you have never known love. That's why it's not good enough just to believe. He wants you to know truth. Or in other words, I want you to know love. This is your objective in life, is to know truth. Why? Truth sets you free. And to know truth is to know God, and to know God is to love, and to know love means you're set free. Say you got hurt at the age of 8, 9, 6, 7, 10, 12. Today you are 32 years old. You have grown in age, but you have not matured past the time you were hurt. So you can be a 12-year-old person emotionally, and yet a 35-year-old man. And so we don't understand that. We're trying to do relationships, but you're still closed in. And if your heart's closed because you closed it the day you were hurt, the day you were wounded, the day somebody did you wrong, you closed it out. And the only thing left for you to walk in is in response to the flesh.
Join us again for Victory Today with Tony and Cynthia Brazelton. And remember, 1 John 4:17 says, as Jesus is, so are we in this world.